We've all been hurt by someone, maybe a friend, a partner, a family member, or even a stranger. Emotional pain can leave deep scars, and if we're not careful, we carry those wounds for years. But today, I want to offer you something different. Not just survival, but strength. Not just getting through it, but growing from it before anything else. Before setting boundaries, before forgiving, before moving on, you must do something that might seem so small, but it is deeply powerful. Acknowledge that you're hurt. In a world that constantly pressures us to be strong, to get over it, or to just let it go, many people bypass this first crucial step. We put on a smile, we pretend it doesn't bother us, we say we're fine when we're anything but. But pain, unacknowledged, doesn't disappear. It buries itself deeper, showing up later as bitterness, anxiety, depression, or mistrust. Ignored pain festers. Recognized pain begins to heal. To acknowledge pain is to pause and say, yes, that did hurt me. That wasn't okay. That changed something in me. It's giving yourself permission to feel, to cry, to be angry, to feel betrayed or disappointed. It's understanding that being hurt doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Think about the last time someone deeply hurt you. Maybe it was a friend who betrayed your trust. Maybe it was a parent who never showed up for you emotionally. Maybe it was a partner who left without explanation, or a colleague who undermined your efforts in front of others. Think back to how it made you feel. Not just the obvious emotions, but the layered ones. The sting of rejection, the confusion, the fear that maybe you weren't good enough. The question, why me? What did I do to deserve this? We often skip past those emotions because they are uncomfortable. We're afraid to sit in the mess. We fear that if we really let ourselves feel, we might fall apart. But the truth is, feeling doesn't break us, suppressing does. Imagine a child who falls and scrapes their knee. You don't tell them to get up and stop crying immediately. You kneel down, you look at the wound, you say, that must hurt, let's clean it. The same must be done for emotional wounds. You can't heal what you refuse to see. Acknowledging pain also means being honest about who caused it. Sometimes it's easier to blame ourselves than to admit someone we loved didn't treat us right, especially when it's someone we respect, admire, or deeply care about. But healing requires truth. You don't have to hate them, but you do have to admit what they did. This process might bring up old memories, unresolved hurts from years ago. That's okay. Pain has a way of hiding in our bodies, in our habits, in the things we avoid. Maybe the way you flinch at confrontation, or your fear of trusting others, or your tendency to overachieve just to feel enough. Maybe those are all echoes of unacknowledged wounds. Now is the time to trace those echoes back to their source. And don't let anyone rush you through this part. Some pain is loud and obvious. Some is subtle and quiet. Sometimes the most painful moments aren't what happened, but what didn't. The apology you never got. The validation you never heard. The love that was never given. Acknowledge it all. Write it down. Talk to a therapist. Share it with a trusted friend. Cry about it. Pray about it. Sit with it. You are allowed to feel every inch of it, because when you do, something incredible starts to happen. You begin to reclaim power over the experience. The moment you name your pain, it begins to lose its grip on you. You become the narrator of your story, not the silent sufferer inside it. And from there, true healing can begin. Once you've acknowledged the pain, the next step in healing is often the hardest, not because it's complicated, but because it challenges deeply rooted habits and fears. It demands you to step into a place of self-respect and sometimes confrontation. That step is setting healthy boundaries. What exactly is a boundary? A boundary is the invisible line that separates you from someone else. It defines what is okay and what is not okay. It communicates, this is who I am. This is what I need, and this is how I expect to be treated. It is not a wall to keep people out. It is a filter designed to protect your energy, your peace, your values, your identity. For many of us, especially those who are empathetic, nurturing, or people-pleasing by nature, boundaries feel selfish. You may have been taught to believe that love means giving without limits, tolerating disrespect, or being endlessly available. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-abandonment. Setting boundaries is how you tell the world, I love myself enough not to let you harm me twice. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Especially when the person who hurt you is someone you care about deeply. A parent, a sibling, a partner, a best friend. You might worry that setting boundaries will upset them. You may fear they'll call you cold, dramatic, or ungrateful. You may feel guilty. This is normal, but here's a truth many people discover too late. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always be the ones most offended when you set them. And that's not a reason to stay silent. That's a reason to speak louder. Boundaries don't have to be angry. They don't have to be cruel. They can be as calm as a whisper, as clear as a line in the sand. I'm not available for that conversation right now. If you raise your voice at me, I will walk away. I need time before I can respond to that message. I love you, but I won't be attending family events where I'm disrespected. I will not tolerate being spoken to like that. Some boundaries are emotional, others are physical, mental, digital, or even spiritual. Some are permanent, while others are temporary until trust is rebuilt. You get to decide that, not them, you. And here's another thing. Boundaries aren't just for the people who hurt you. They're for you too. To remind yourself that you are not a doormat, that your voice matters, that your time matters, that your heart deserves protection. Maybe the person who hurt you keeps apologizing but doesn't change. Maybe they play the victim. Maybe they expect you to move on because it's easier for them than sitting with what they did. A boundary is how you say, apologies are not enough. Behavior must change. And if it doesn't, then your boundary becomes a barrier, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because access to you is a privilege, not a right. You are not obligated to keep giving someone chances just because of history, blood, or guilt. This process will challenge you. It will push you to examine your patterns. Have you been overextending? Have you confused being needed with being valued? Have you allowed disrespect to hide behind humor, tradition, or that's just how they are? Setting boundaries is how you shift the narrative. It's how you begin to teach people how to treat you, not through pleading, but through action, through consistency, through silence if necessary. It may be lonely at first. Not everyone will understand. But over time, the people who are meant to stay in your life will respect your boundaries, and the ones who can't, that's your answer. You are not mean for setting limits. You are not cold for protecting yourself. You are healing, and healing requires space. Space to breathe, space to rest, space to rebuild trust, first with others, but most importantly with yourself. Because at the end of the day, a boundary is not just a line. It's a declaration, a radical act of self-love, a vow to never abandon yourself again. This might be one of the hardest ideas to grasp when you're hurting, when your heart feels cracked open, when your mind is cycling through the same painful memory on repeat. It sounds impossible, even insulting at times. How could I not take it personally? They hurt me, they ignored me, they betrayed me, they lied to me. That feels very personal. But here's the truth. Most of what people do to you has very little to do with you and everything to do with them. Their choices, their behavior, their projections, their inability to communicate or treat you with respect. These are reflections of their inner world, not your worth. When someone wounds you, it's natural to internalize it, to start asking questions like, what did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Could I have prevented this? Why me? That self-interrogation is part of the survival mechanism in us. It's the mind trying to make sense of chaos, trying to locate some cause so we can prevent future pain. But this logic is flawed. It assumes that you are responsible for their behavior. You weren't. Take a moment to really think about the person who hurt you. What do you know about them, their past, their wounds, their fears, their patterns? So often, people are operating from unresolved trauma, insecurity, immaturity, or emotional limitation. Some people lash out because they don't know how to ask for what they need. Some sabotage relationships because they don't believe they deserve love. Others manipulate, withdraw, or ghost you, not because you did anything wrong, but because they lack the tools or courage to face emotional discomfort. You might have just been in the crossfire of their own internal battle. It's like walking through a room and getting hit by a door someone else swung open too hard. You weren't meant to get hit, but you were standing there, so you did. It still hurts, but the hit wasn't personal. It wasn't about you. Not taking things personally doesn't mean you excuse their actions. It means you detach your identity from their dysfunction. It means you stop defining your worth by the way someone else failed to see it. It's incredibly freeing when you begin to understand that someone's rudeness isn't proof that you're unlovable, that their betrayal isn't proof that you're foolish, that their coldness isn't a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a mirror of what's going on within them. And this concept doesn't just apply to big dramatic pain, it applies to everyday wounds too. The friend who suddenly pulls away, the coworker who seems irritated for no reason, the partner who makes a sharp comment during an argument. So often we absorb the negativity around us like a sponge, making it part of our self-concept. But you can unlearn that. You can learn to create emotional separation between someone's behavior and your self-esteem. You can pause and think, is this truly about me, or is this about something they're carrying? You can even learn to observe behavior with compassion instead of internalization, not because you excuse it, but because you refuse to let it define your reality. This shift in mindset is powerful because it takes you out of the victim role. When you stop taking things personally, you stop handing over your emotional power to other people's moods, words, or actions. You stop riding their emotional roller coaster. It's like stepping off a battlefield and choosing not to pick up every arrow that's been fired in your direction. You don't need to bleed over every insult. You don't need to chase every apology. You don't need to twist yourself into knots trying to decode someone else's silence or cruelty. They made a choice. You didn't cause it, and you're not responsible for fixing it. That doesn't mean you weren't affected. Of course you were. You're allowed to feel everything: hurt, confusion, sadness, even rage. But those feelings don't have to turn into shame or self-blame. You can feel the wound without making it your identity. And eventually, with time and awareness, you can stop saying, "Why did they do this to me?" and start saying, "I see now that they're operating from a place I don't belong to. I release it, I return to myself." Because the truth is, who you are, your value, your beauty, your worthiness is not up for negotiation, especially not by someone who couldn't see it. Not taking it personally is not indifference, it's clarity. It's emotional maturity. It's the moment you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of the person who hurt you and start seeing yourself clearly again. There is a split second between what someone does to you and how you choose to deal with it. That moment, that brief, often invisible pause is where your power lives. When we are hurt, especially by people we love or trust, our instinct is often to react instantly, emotionally, impulsively. That reaction might be shouting, crying, slamming doors, sending that long message, cutting someone off without a word, or even trying to hurt them back. Because when someone wounds you, it lights a fire inside, a fire of injustice, betrayal, humiliation, sadness, rage. You want to do something, say something, prove something. But here's the hard truth. Reaction is a reflex. Response is a choice. One is driven by emotion in its rawest, most unfiltered form. The other is guided by awareness, self-control, and intentionality. Reacting feels satisfying in the moment. It can feel like reclaiming power. But more often than not, reactions are fueled by unresolved pain, fear, and ego. And when the adrenaline wears off, we're left with consequences: regret, guilt, more conflict, broken relationships, and sometimes we even lose a bit of ourselves in the heat of that reaction. Let's get real for a second. How many times have you said something when you were angry and immediately wished you could take it back? How many texts have you sent in emotional pain that later felt like oversharing, desperation, or self-betrayal? How many times have you matched someone's cruelty only to realize you let them drag you down to their level? That's the cost of reacting. Responding, on the other hand, takes practice. It's the mature, grounded decision to feel everything, but not let your feelings run the show. It's not about being passive or bottling up emotions. It's about being intentional with your voice, your timing, your energy. It's about stepping back, taking a breath, and asking yourself, what's actually going on here? What outcome do I want? What version of me do I want to show up as right now? Responding doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're weak. In fact, it takes more strength to respond calmly than it does to explode. It takes restraint to walk away from drama. It takes wisdom to choose silence over shouting. And it takes self-worth to realize that not everyone deserves immediate access to your emotions. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. That doesn't mean you ignore what happened or let it slide. It means you choose when and how to engage on your terms, not theirs. It means you allow yourself to feel the full weight of what they did, but you process it before you react to it. Responding might look like waiting a full day before answering a text that triggered you. It might look like journaling your feelings first or talking to someone you trust before confronting the person directly. It might look like walking away from an argument, not because you're avoiding it, but because you know you'll only say things you don't mean. Responding is rooted in clarity, and clarity only comes when you slow down. This is especially important when dealing with people who want to provoke you. Some people are fueled by chaos. They feel powerful when they can manipulate your emotions. When you react instantly, you're giving them that power. But when you respond thoughtfully, you remain in control of your story. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless or suppressing your truth. On the contrary, responding actually allows for deeper emotional honesty because it gives you the space to speak your truth with integrity rather than from impulse. Let's say someone deeply offends you. If you react, you might lash out, call them names, bring up old wounds, or say something just to wound them back. That doesn't heal anything, it just adds more damage. But if you respond, you might say, that comment was really hurtful. I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. I need some time before I can continue this conversation. Let's revisit this when we're both calmer. Right now, I'm not in a place to talk constructively. Notice the difference? One escalates conflict. The other sets a boundary and protects your peace without denying what you feel. You're not always going to get it right. You'll react sometimes. We all do. You're human. But the more you practice responding instead of reacting, the more self-respect you'll build. You'll stop letting other people's behavior dictate your emotional state. You'll stop feeling like a puppet whose strings anyone can pull. Responding is how you reclaim authorship over your story. It's how you pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, I am not their opinion of me. I am not their dysfunction. I am not what they said or did in a moment of weakness. I am my own person, and I choose who I want to be in this moment. That choice is yours every single time. When someone hurts us, truly hurts us, there's something inside us that begins to ache, not just from the wound itself, but from the unanswered questions that come with it. We want clarity, we want reasons, we want the truth. We want to look that person in the eye and ask, why? Why did you do this? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you care? Why couldn't you just be honest with me? And what we're searching for, often desperately, is something we call closure. Closure seems like a final chapter, like a signed, sealed explanation that we can file away in the archives of our heart. It promises resolution, peace, a neat ending to an emotional mess. And so we chase it, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for years, sometimes through long texts they never answer, through arguments that go in circles, through stalking their social media, through reliving every conversation in our minds, trying to decode what we missed. Sometimes we even go back to the person who hurt us, hoping they'll say the right thing this time. hoping they'll make it make sense. But the painful truth is, closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you give yourself. Waiting for someone else to give you closure is like standing at the door of a house that burned down, waiting for someone to come back and explain how the fire started. The fire is over, the damage is done, and maybe the person who lit the match doesn't even know or care how much they destroyed. Maybe they're not capable of giving you the kind of truth you deserve. Maybe they don't even have that truth themselves. And that is a hard pill to swallow, that someone could hurt you and never look back, that they could damage you and move on without repair, that the justice you're waiting for may never come, that the apology you need may never be spoken, that the understanding you crave may never arrive. Some people leave with no goodbye. Some relationships end without a conversation. Some betrayals never come with an explanation. So what do you do then? How do you live with the silence, the open wound, the missing puzzle piece? You choose healing anyway, even without closure. You choose to let go, not because it all makes sense, but because holding on is costing you your peace. You choose to stop replaying the past, not because you got the answers, but because the questions are eating you alive. You choose to move forward, not because everything feels resolved, but because you deserve a life that isn't anchored to someone else's inability to love you the right way. Healing without closure is one of the most courageous things a person can do, because it requires you to surrender your need to understand, to say, I may never know why. I may never know what they truly felt. I may never get the apology. I may never hear the words that would have made it all make sense, but I choose to release it anyway. And it's not a one-time choice, it's a daily one. Some mornings you'll wake up and feel okay. Other mornings the pain will come rushing back like a wave. You'll be tempted to reach out, to check their page, to revisit the past. But healing is the quiet act of choosing yourself every time, of choosing to not reopen the wound, of choosing to give yourself the love, the validation, the understanding that they could not or would not give you. And slowly, something shifts. You begin to reclaim your story. You begin to see that your healing was never supposed to come from them. It was always yours. You begin to see that closure isn't found in their words. It's found in your growth, in the way you rise from what broke you, in the way you refuse to let their actions define your worth. Healing over closure means you stop needing their approval to release the pain. You stop needing their cooperation to build your peace. You stop letting someone else's inability to meet you where you deserve to be met hold your life hostage. It's not about pretending it did matter. It did. It does. But it's about recognizing that their failure does not require your continued suffering. Closure is tidy, satisfying, often fictional. Healing is messy, unpredictable, but real. Sometimes you get closure, sometimes you don't. But healing, that's always an option. And it starts the moment you decide that you don't need to hear their explanation to validate your experience, that what happened, happened, and that you get to move forward, not because they gave you peace, but because you gave it to yourself. Because your life is worth more than waiting for someone to explain why they couldn't love you the way you deserved. The word forgiveness carries a weight, a tension, and sometimes even resistance in the heart, especially when you've been deeply hurt. For many, it feels like surrendering, like letting someone off the hook. Forgiveness can feel like a betrayal of your pain, as if saying, I forgive you somehow means what you did was okay. But real forgiveness is not about releasing the other person from accountability. It's about releasing yourself from the prison of pain they built inside of you. Let's be honest, there is a part of us that wants justice, that wants the person who hurt us to feel what we felt, to understand the depth of our wounds, to apologize sincerely or suffer equally, or at the very least know how deeply they affected us. We imagine scenarios in our minds where they come crawling back, filled with remorse, finally realizing what they did. We rehearse conversations where we get to say everything we never said, the truth, the anger, the sorrow, and we believe, maybe then I'll be able to forgive. Maybe then I'll find peace. But that moment rarely comes. And even when it does, it often doesn't bring the satisfaction we imagined. Because forgiveness that's tied to someone else's behavior is fragile. It's conditional. It gives them power over your healing. True forgiveness is something else entirely. Forgiveness is a decision you make, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It doesn't mean welcoming that person back into your life. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. It's not even a conversation necessarily. Sometimes the other person never even hears the words, "I forgive you," because forgiveness isn't for them. It's for the part of you that's still carrying the weight of what they did. It's for the version of you that wakes up with anger in your chest. It's for the version of you that can't trust, can't breathe fully, can't rest emotionally because of the burden that pain still holds. Forgiveness is the moment you look at your wounds and say, "This happened. It hurt. It changed me, but I will not let it own me forever." There is power in that. Quiet, sacred power. But make no mistake, forgiveness is not always instant. It doesn't come wrapped in a single moment of clarity or spiritual enlightenment. Sometimes it's a process, a slow, painful peeling back of resentment, layer by layer. Sometimes forgiveness looks like waking up and still feeling the pain, but choosing not to let it harden your heart. Sometimes it means forgiving the same person again and again, not because they keep hurting you, but because pieces of the past keep showing up in your present. And the most difficult forgiveness of all, it's not always about them. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, for not seeing the red flags, for staying too long, for believing in someone who broke you, for giving too many chances, for losing parts of yourself in the name of love or loyalty. We beat ourselves up for what we didn't know then, for what we tolerated, for what we hoped. But that's the thing, when we know better, we do better. And punishing yourself for the mistakes of your past won't heal you. Forgiveness, when you forgive, you're not pretending the pain didn't happen. You're not pretending you weren't changed by it. You're simply choosing to no longer let that pain drive your life. You're choosing to unclench your fists, to release the poison from your system, to stop rehearsing the same story that keeps you stuck in victimhood. And this is not weakness. Forgiveness is strength. It's bravery. It's an act of rebellion against bitterness. It's saying, you no longer get to live rent-free in my heart. It's reclaiming emotional real estate that has been occupied by someone who has already left, moved on, or never took accountability in the first place. Some days, forgiveness looks like peace. Other days, it looks like tears. Some days, it feels like freedom. Other days, it feels like surrendering a shield you've carried for years. You don't have to rush it. Forgiveness does not have a deadline, but it does have a destination, your own wholeness. You may not be able to change what happened. You may not ever get the justice or understanding you deserve. But what you can do, what you must do for your own soul, is refuse to let that pain control the rest of your life. You can choose to loosen its grip. You can choose to stop bleeding for someone who never stayed to clean up the mess they made. You can choose to heal without waiting for the apology that may never come. Because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about setting down the sword so you can finally rest, so you can finally exhale, so you can walk forward lighter, not because the past changed, but because you did. There comes a time in life, especially after you've been hurt, when you realize that not everyone should have access to you. Not everyone should get to walk freely through the sacred spaces of your life, your energy, your emotions. And the lesson that comes from pain, perhaps one of the most important ones, is this: you must learn to set boundaries, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishments. They are not cold silences or acts of revenge. Boundaries are not you becoming closed off or too sensitive. No, boundaries are the voice of your healing. They are the shape your growth takes. They are the invisible fences that say, this is how I will allow myself to be treated. This is what I need to feel safe, valued, and whole. After someone hurts you, especially repeatedly, you may find that your sense of safety gets shattered. You second-guess your instincts. You wonder if you were too much, too trusting, too naive. And in that emotional confusion, it's easy to lose track of your own needs. It's easy to start letting people take more than they give, to shrink yourself so you're easier to love, to avoid confrontation because you fear being seen as difficult. But peace does not come from being a doormat. Healing does not come from tolerating mistreatment. And love is not real if it asks you to abandon your boundaries in order to keep it. Setting boundaries is how you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were given away too easily or taken without consent. You are not obligated to keep letting someone back in just because they apologize. You are not required to stay in spaces that leave you emotionally drained. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say, I need time. You are allowed to say, I don't feel safe around this person right now. You are allowed to walk away, not to be dramatic, not to create distance, but because you have decided that your inner peace is more important than forcing yourself to maintain connections that cost you too much. And yes, setting boundaries might make some people uncomfortable. People who are used to you being constantly available. People who are used to your silence, your compliance, your self-sacrifice. The moment you begin to assert your needs, some people will call you selfish. Some will accuse you of changing. Some may even try to guilt you, shame you, manipulate you back into old patterns. That is because your boundaries threaten the control they once had. But remember this, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always be the ones most upset when you finally build them. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You are responsible for your emotional safety. That means choosing who gets to enter your mental space, who gets to speak into your life, who gets access to your time, your energy, your vulnerability. And sometimes protecting your space means making painful decisions. It means distancing yourself from people you once called family. It means cutting ties with someone you loved. It means unfollowing, blocking, stepping away. Not because you hate them, but because your soul can no longer survive in the chaos they bring. You're not being dramatic. You're not overreacting. You're not building walls out of spite. You are simply refusing to keep drinking poison and calling it love. You are choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They are about inviting in only what honors your growth. And sometimes boundaries are not even about others. Sometimes they're about you, about learning to say no to your own self-sabotaging tendencies, about recognizing when you're stretching yourself too thin, giving too much, staying too long in spaces where you no longer belong. Sometimes it means saying, I need rest. I don't have to respond right now. I'm not responsible for fixing this. Boundaries with yourself can be just as essential as boundaries with others. Protecting your space means choosing who and what you allow into your life, like a gardener choosing which plants will grow in their soil. You don't let weeds take root in sacred ground. You don't pour water into cracked jars. You don't let storm after storm pass through your garden without covering what matters most. Boundaries are the way you say, I am worth protecting. And the beauty of boundaries is that they teach others how to love you. They become a compass, a guide, a structure through which respect and care are made visible. When you enforce a boundary, you're not just protecting yourself, you're modeling self-worth. You're showing people that love does not mean access without accountability. Boundaries may not always be loud. Sometimes they are silent steps back. Sometimes they are the quiet deletion of a number. Sometimes they are the moments you choose peace over proving your point, solitude over arguments, distance over dysfunction. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to you. Not after they hurt you, not when they disrespect your growth, not when they continue to take and take without ever pouring back. Your space is sacred. Your energy is finite. And your healing journey deserves protection from people who bring more wounds than warmth. At the end of the day, we cannot control how others treat us. We cannot stop people from hurting us, disappointing us, or leaving us with questions they'll never answer. But we can control how we rise from the hurt. We can choose who we become in the aftermath. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you do next. Will you carry the pain like a burden, or will you carry it like a lesson? Will you become bitter, Or will you choose to become wiser, more discerning, more at peace? Healing is not linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days, the weight of the past will sit heavy on your chest. But every day that you choose to honor your peace, enforce your boundaries, forgive for your own freedom, and love yourself fiercely, you are healing. And that healing is not just for you, it's a gift to your future self, to the relationships you haven't built yet, to the life you're still meant to live. You deserve joy that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve love that doesn't come with pain. You deserve peace that no one has the power to take from you. So keep going. Quietly, powerfully, let the pain teach you, but never let it define you. Because your healing is not just possible, it's already happening. And you're doing better than you think.